And good evening and welcome back once again, this time to Wee Bonnie Scotland and round 6 of the RTA British Touring Car Championship or Touring Car Championship season in association with Motorsport.ie. My name is Kevin Galvin. I will be joined very shortly by Evan Dalton. Ronan Hederman is in the background doing his usual stuff, and you join us north of the border and for our highest and probably lowest round of the year on this track, nestled nicely near the town of Dunfermline between Edinburgh and Glasgow, but huge elevation changes here for the Knockhill circuit, a circuit that has seen some good times and some bad, but after some recent renovations is ready to host the latest round of this championship. And it's a championship that's been heating up as we've been going along. We've had lots of different winners, lots of chaos. Last week with Oulton Park was absolutely no exception, and with these tight tracks and these touring cars that just invite a little bit of nibbling and biting, we're sure to have plenty of incident again. So thank you very much for joining us. If you're new to the channel, thank you very much. You feel free to click subscribe and get involved in the chat, as many others will do over the course of this evening, and give us a like while you're at it. It's Tuesday night and we are where we always are, sat in front of a computer screen watching these guys do battle. But in the virtual world, we have travelled from our northern enough base at Oulton Park in Cheshire right up to Knockhill, in, as I said, nestled between Edinburgh and Glasgow, for the track, which is newly renovated in recent years to allow the track being run in both anti-clockwise and clockwise variations. We're taking the clockwise variation as you go down the Duffus Dip, McIntyre, Butcher, Chicane, Brabham, Clark, up the railway straight and around Taylor's Hairpin to finish what is a 1.26 mile in old money track around this Scottish hallowed ground. 9 turns with a race lap record of 41.8 seconds set by Heather Calder. Not entirely sure what's happening with our track map there, but obviously in these British touring cars you're looking towards a lap of maybe around 46 or 47 seconds. So as I said, my name is Kevin Galvin. I am joined here by Evan Dalton on what is a nice enough day here in Scotland for Scottish weather. No rain, just 16% humidity and a very high track temp once again, 39 degrees with a 20 degree air temp here, which we seem to be blessed with every time we go racing in the RTA Championship. Evan, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately you missed last week due to a bit of illness. First of all, how are you feeling? And second of all, how do you think this one's going to go?
I'm here to tell the tale. I'm doing well, Kevin. Thank you very much. Hope you didn't miss me too much. I'm sure you are all missed me so much last week. But we're here at the home of Wind Chill, Scotland, but it's a nice high 20 degrees, so it should be a good one. The track conditions pretty optimal for racing in these cars, certainly what the drivers have alluded to in the last few weeks. This should be a good one. It was a chaotic race last time we visited here in Knockhill in the Formula V season finale. It's probably going to be a chaotic one here again this evening. It's a tight track, we have a lot of cars out on circuit, and the battling should be good. Speaking of things being kept close, Kevin, the championship, closer than I think any RTA championship has been in quite some time.
Yeah, and we're having people dipping in and out. We'll have a look at the championship standings here now for you. So Ronan Doherty leading on 320. That's despite a 30-point penalty. So add that on, he would have been quite a bit ahead. In second place is Oscar Mangan, who's a man that we expected to kind of not dominate this championship, but certainly to be in the lead of it. And we'll have a look at how practice has gone so far. But he is off the pace again this evening. Then Dylan McClements has snuck his way up to 310 points. He was well out of it in the opening couple of rounds, but he's found some form to battle back. Followed by Brandon McGahan and Robbie Callahan. Robbie, who again could have potentially had a great week last week, but unfortunately incidents put paid to his chances. Wayne Douglas is in P6, the championship, followed by Dan Mould, then Jordan Kelly, Evan Walsh and Sean McGoldrick. So that is where we stand. Any one of these 10 guys could be in with a shout of winning a race this evening, which makes things very, very tight indeed. And of course, let's remember we have a B championship as well to look after, with the likes of Dave Collier, right on cue. Dave Collier with 92 points, Finlay Melvin on 77, Simon Hutchinson 76, David Prunty on 64, Jacob Hobbs on 52, small typo there. Emma Dempsey on 45 points, followed by Phil Upson, then Andrew Murphy, Simon Wall, and Nathan Sweeney once again on minus points. I don't think Nathan took part last week, so I'll see if he's on the grid here. I suspect he is not. But no, he is indeed not on. Oh no, wait, there he is. He just hasn't set a lap yet. So an opportunity for Nathan to get into plus points here in the B Championship, but it seems like his chances are fairly well out. Now, we talked earlier about how chaotic this place can be, and if anything will give you that indication as we head into qualifying, Evan, is the sheer amount of sand and gravel that's finding its way onto grass. You can see on the left-hand side there, it looks a bit like the exit of an Augusta bunker. Because there's sand sprayed all over the grass there. So it'll be interesting to see for these guys whether they can stay out of trouble, because that's really the name of the game this evening.
Yeah, if it was a Sunday, you'd probably find McElroy somewhere in one of these gravel traps. They're quite deep bunkers and a lot of gravel out on track. What does that lead to? Well, a lack of grip. What does that lead to? I don't think I need to allude to. Look at that. It almost looks like the track is horribly textured and like the graphics are absolutely terrible, but it's not. It's genuinely sand and gravel, and it is all over the circuit here. There's been a lot of running wide in qualifying already, even in the 1 minute and 45 seconds that we have of it. But Ronan Doherty is the pace setter so far, and as he comes towards the start finish line, we're going to get a banker time for everybody to beat. It'll be a 51.5, so we're under the 1 minute lap times once again, just like we were in the season opener in Brands Hatch. Dylan McClements then goes second with a 52.1. 52.7 for Dave Collier, third and off the order. You can kind of see the free splits of drivers so far this evening. Dan Mould 51.7, so not a bad lap there. That first lap from Doherty, considering it's the very first lap in qualifying, is very competitive.
Yeah, it's good, very good. I mean, you'll be looking for around 50 seconds potentially. There is improvement there to be had as the track rubbers in a little bit. Speaking of incidents and specifically off tracks, I won't name the driver. We did have a driver in a practice session that was not far off 100 off tracks. And having a look there, they've already made 3 in the first 2 minutes and 40 seconds in this qualifying session. So off tracks will absolutely be a feature here. It will definitely be a feature here for this evening, because you know, we talk about the race format that we'll have. We'll come to that in a second. We'll just keep an eye on what's happening here. But 15x gives you an off track, and if like a certain driver who we haven't mentioned yet, and you're already starting, who isn't on screen at the moment, you're what is he on now? He's already on 3 off tracks. Like if you're picking up an off track a minute and you have a 20-minute race, then you're driving yourself to a disqualification.
Yeah, let's stop beating around the bush here. It was Finlay Melvin, folks, who had 100 off tracks in practice. So despite this being his home race, I believe I saw at the Discord earlier, he might fancy himself for a podium in this one, has been running off quite a bit. But qualifying so far, not too bad for Finlay, and he's going to try and get a good lap in. Here's Evan Walsh rounding through the final corner, wide line through the hairs. There you go, Finlay Melvin, 52 flat, 5 tenths off pole, closest he's been off season. No longer 5 tenths off pole, now 6. Dan Mould improves it. 51.4 for Dan Mould, who's still looking to launch a championship run. No race win for Dan Mould since round 3 in Snetterton, when he took the win ahead of the 2 McClements brothers. So it has been quite a drought for someone who we thought was just going to dominate this series, really. When he came in, was very impressive in his first round in Donington Park, and we almost feared that it was going to be the Dan Mould show, but it hasn't turned out that way. We've had a lot of race winners, last week being the second week of the season with 3 different race winners in 3 different heats, and that is quite rare for RTA. Usually you get someone dominating heat 1 and 2 and then a different winner in 3, but it's been different this season, and I suppose that bodes nicely coming into tonight.
Yeah, it really throws everything wide open. We saw the championship standings earlier, and as I said, any one of the top 10 could be in with a shout of a podium or even a race win, depending on what happens. So, very, very tight this field. Jordan Kelly has come back in after missing the first couple of races and has thrown things wide open as well. Obviously, Dylan McClemon's involved in a fairly robust incident with Oscar Mangan, I think, but definitely Oscar and Ronan coming together as well over the course of the season. So, an awful lot of them are kind of mixing. All of the front runners are actually getting involved in incidents directly with each other. It's not just a case of being caught up in incidents with those in the back, which adds a little extra needle to proceedings as well. Good to see Dan Mould back on top. Dan, as you said, had a great beginning to this championship. As you said, he's kind of gone off the boil a small bit in the last couple of races, but still huge opportunities. Do remember, we have 3 heats every evening. And so we have 3 evenings left, 3 rounds left. We have this, then we go to Silverstone National, and we finish off at the GP Brands Hatch circuit. So still 9 races to get plenty of points here, and potentially lose out points as well. Let's have a look at that race, that calendar, should I say. So we've finished 5 out of 8 thus far. We're up in Knockhill, as I said, north of the border here in Scotland, right near Dunfermline. We're also near Fife and Falkirk as well, so we're right in the heart of Scottish football territory. Next week we head back down to the soft south of Silverstone National, which is the shorter version of the track. Otherwise we would be here days trying to finish off our last lap before we head to the GP section of Brands Hatch, right back where we started in the county of Kent for the final race, and indeed on the final Tuesday of the final Tuesday of the spring, what some people consider spring. I know it's Irish summer, but many consider spring, before we head into June. We will also have news of the next championship that will again take the same form as we're seeing tonight. Race 1 with a 10-minute start grid set by the qualifying that you see in front of you, then 15 minutes with the grid set by race 1, and race 3 20-minute with reverse 8 from the top, from race 2, should I say. So first 8 goes to first, 7 goes to second, etc, etc. 9th onwards stay where they are. The bottom one is of particular interest, as I said earlier, Evan, drive-throughs at 15x, and when we're looking at how these guys are taking, I suppose particularly the Butchers section and chicane sections, to being pushed out wide onto the gravel there going down the Brabham Straight. X off tracks will undoubtedly, in my mind, have a part to play over the course of this evening.
Yeah, they will. They will play a factor 100%. And another thing that will play a factor is going off the actual track as well into that gravel and losing a lot of lap time. This track is so unforgiving at the best of times. A lot of drivers do like it because you can really make a difference if you're a consistent driver, and the likes of Dylan McClemens and stuff are, and that's what they've become infamous for in RTA, Dylan, Ronan. That's why they're up battling for championships, is because of how consistent you are. But if you're all over the place at Knockhill, you're not going to be quick. You've got to be smooth, you've got to be consistent, and there's a reason the Hyundai sort of is the quickest car tonight. And now this is just me guessing this, but I think it's because it's the easiest to drive, and that's why it's nice and quick. It doesn't necessarily have the best top speed, arguably the best through the corners maybe, who knows, but it's quite easy to drive, and that bodes nicely around Knockhill. You can see there's high raised curbs everywhere. It wants to bounce your car. Like, look at Ronan Doherty through there. He's almost like Tony Hawk on one of the skateboard ramps, bouncing his way across the Arnold Clark chicane. Smooth, consistent, and that will do the job. But I believe we do have an onboard lap, Kevin, to give a closer look at the circuit.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wayne Douglas is our man that we are following this evening. We always take a cue from different people. So let's have a look at Wayne Douglas's lap. He's 3rd place at the moment as he heads down the back straight here. One of my favourite back straights in all of English. You see the stand at the top of that as we head down Duffus Dip. Really huge camber changes, massive elevation changes on this circuit as well, built almost on the side of the hill. He goes around McIntyre over Butchers, and as we hear that chicane, Clark chicane, as you bounce up and over the curb to try and keep it within the white lines. You head down towards Clark. This again is an off camber up and over a hump as you try and keep the car rested. You can see just as how much gravel was on the grass there as well from the practice session earlier on. Now you head right up the railway straight and around the big hairpin here, Taylor's hairpin. You get really tight to that as much as you can. Very late turning on that, and picking your braking spot is very, very difficult. I absolutely adore that little terrace on the like. There's two stands here, one at the bottom of the circuit, one at the top of the circuit, and they are literally, they couldn't be more Scottish non-league if you found them. Like if you took them out and put them in a Bonnie Rig Rangers ground, they wouldn't look out of place. They are,
Yeah,
you know,
reeks of Falkirk.
it absolutely reeks of Falkirk. Yeah, 100%. You can see it there in the background. It's just a sloped gradient with a roof over it, much like what we see in Mondello. There's no, next week we're heading to Silverstone, where you get the VIP section and the perfect grandstands and the Lewis Hamilton straight. There's no Lewis Hamilton straight here. It's just steak and ale pies and a pint of bitter, basically. That's what you're getting. And if you don't like it, then tough. Because it's essentially a corrugated shed that's overlooking the circuit, which I absolutely love. Thanks to
Can I just make a joke based on our old jokes? It's the Ulster Championship of race circuits.
It absolutely is. It's not even the Ulster Championship. I mean, compare this to a. I mean,
It's a Division
maybe,
3. It's a Division
I was
3
gonna say,
Junior B game in Wicklow.
maybe
That's a sight.
maybe Casement Park, if that's what you're going to compare it to a ground. But other than that, there isn't much comparison.
Sorry if
to that.
anyone who has a love for Knockhill or potentially even works for the circuit is watching this. We do apologise. We love the track, but it definitely reeks of Falkirk.
It's just it's such a, like, when people talk about how expensive motorsport is and how, they can often, with the whole idea of F1 and all that, it can kind of seem to be all glitz and glamour. Like, we just had the Miami Grand Prix recently. This could not be the furthest thing from the Miami Grand Prix. I would love to see a Martin Brundle celebrity grid walk at Knockhill. That's all I'd like to say. But yeah, Ronan Doherty, doesn't matter to him. Put asphalt down in front of him, he'll be quick on it, regardless of what's on it. He's a 51.4. That was a time set earlier in the session, but he has overtaken Dan Mould with only a few minutes left. And this is Ronan's attempt to trying to get back into the championship. Still not carrying the official Team DDR livery is Ronan. He's just given up, I think, for this season. But you can see how much they cut that curb. They absolutely drive over it. There's no attempt at going through the chicane. You're just going over it, essentially. But these cars can take the bit of punishment, and these guys have these cars set up to take the punishment. So it would be interesting to see whether Ronan can indeed gain on that. He is our championship leader, as we said, albeit with 30 penalty points. So for Ronan, it's a great opportunity for him to try and consolidate his lead. If you can get a good result tonight, then it takes a little bit of the pressure off going into the final 2 rounds of the season.
Yeah, Ronan last season didn't win races until the back part of the season. Got his first race win, I think, in Spa-Francorchamps in the season finale. He's taken a different approach here this season, and he's actually taken a leap out of his teammate and his cousin Dylan McClements' book. He won a couple races at the start of the season, or he won a couple of races at the start of the season, one in Brands Hatch, one in Donington. Hasn't won since in the last 3 weeks, but those consistent podiums are the reason he's at the top of the championship. And that was a formula that worked back in the LMP2s. It's working so far here in the British Touring Car Championship, especially when most weeks we've seen a front runner get involved in an incident. We've seen them been hit off or maybe even have a spin, lose a lot of points. So that consistency is key. I know it's a word I've said about 50 times tonight, but I cannot stress how important it is. Here's the two Team DDR cars, once again providing their slipstream game to us here on the stream, and Ronan Doherty heading in towards turn number 1 with Dylan McClements right behind. Dylan looking to try and jump himself up the order a little bit more. It's currently Doherty at the top, Dan Mould in second, Wayne Douglas in third, then it is Oscar Mangan, then it's Dylan, Robbie Callaghan in sixth, and Finlay Melvin, I tell you what, he's doing well here at his home race in seventh, despite us slating him for the practice off tracks. Peter McCann is in eighth, and Jordan Kelly in ninth, and Rory O'Shea not doing too bad in 10th, but it's very close to the top, as you would expect at a 2.0 kilometre circuit.
Yeah, well, Finlay is still keeping up his record of an off-track per minute. So if he keeps going at that, it doesn't matter how quick he is, because he's going to end up with a drive-through in both race 2 and race 3. Speaking of the McClements, and thank you very much to Geraldine, as always, for joining us. It's just as well that Dylan is getting a tow from cousin Ronan, because he needs to try and keep the McClements gain, in it, as Sean has well,
he's also given someone a tow.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, he's followed the form book. Sean has followed the form book set by Jordan Kelly, in that the minute they find a woman, they just ghost the series. So Sean
Jordan is off working. We can't drag poor Jordan into this as well. He's off working, to be fair.
I'm just
Ronan's just
gonna.
warned us that Grace is probably watching. Great, that means the Kyrgyzstan Fiestas will be commented in a minute.
So yeah, that's the inside scoop from the McClements family on where Sean is this evening. I believe he's also in the process of working, or at least working on somebody's car. An
Arguably
unnamed
still quicker
person.
in qualifying.
Well, I'm sure that person probably can't be much worse. Ronan Doherty, although, however, is keeping the Team DDR name alive, and he's topped the qualifying results. Evan, not a lot in it though between the top. I mean, a second separating the top 19 drivers.
Yeah, not a lot in it. This could be a great fight between Ronan Doherty and Dan Mould. Wayne Douglas is in third, Oscar Mangan in fourth, then it is Dylan McClements in fifth, ahead of Robbie Callahan in sixth. Melvin lines up in seventh with Peter McCann in eighth, and then on the fifth row it's Jordan Kelly and Rory O'Shea. Brandon McCaughan, a poor qualifying from him, will be looking to cut through the field with Evan Walsh in 12th. Dermot Toomey in 13th, Dave Collier in 14th, Simon Hutchings in 15th, and it's Dara Halley in 16th, ahead of David Prunty, Kevin Joyce, Conor Melia and Tony Stack in 20th position. Then it's Danny Dempsey ahead of Emma Dempsey, Phil Upson, Jamal Gandor, Nathan Sweeney, and Sean McClemens, of course, not setting a lap in qualifying and not going to take to the grid for this race.
No, Sean fixing his manager's car, so keeping up to the old adage of why cross the street when you can cross the corridor. So it's it's going to be set up for a really interesting race. It's a pity Sean isn't here actually, because he's been really competitive over the course of this series and could have added another spicy note to this race. But we talked about, I suppose, staying safe and consistency. But inevitably, Evan, there's going to be incidents because that's exactly what this type of circuit lends itself for.
There's going to be crashes, there's going to be spins, there's going to be mistakes. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. That is the nature of this track. It gets tight, it gets sketchy, and of course we've seen a lot of spins and mistakes in qualifying, so they're almost inevitable to happen here in the north of Scotland. It's Ronan Doherty on pole position, with Dan Mould in second here for the Motorsport.ie RTA British Touring Car Championship. Round number 6, you're watching on Gantry TV. If you're not subscribed to us, make sure to do so, folks. It's absolutely free and helps us out a lot. The red lights are coming on for the first time here in Fife, Scotland, as we go racing at Knockhill. Brilliant launch from Ronan Doherty off the front row. Dan Mould is almost being swallowed up by Wayne Douglas, and they're going to be side by side down towards the apex of Duffus Dip for the first time. Oh, big crash already in the background. We haven't even reached the corners, and we have a few gone off. There's a couple dropping down the order, Kevin Joyce and Conor Melia being two of those, but we'll get a replay on it in a few moments' time. Doherty hops over the curbs for the first time, cuts off the bollards, and has a comfortable race lead ahead of Wayne Douglas in second. Then it's Dan Mould, Oscar Mangan and Dylan McClements to round out the top 5. The top 5 A-OK, but it's been a little bit more chaotic further back.
Yeah, Nathan Sweeney is a big beneficiary of that big accident in the background, and Dara Halley is the one who's missed out the most alongside Kevin Joyce. He's down 8 places, Kevin down 7 from that massive accident as Dan Mould continues to hold on to second place. But Ronan Doherty already creating a much bigger gap than I have to say I expected, Evan, after one opening lap. He's 7/10 ahead, and we've only done a single lap here at Knockhill.
Yeah, I almost thought it was going to be the other way around, where Mould might have got the launch on Doherty, but Ronan just seems to know how to start these cars and always seems to get his Elantra off the line well. Let's have a look at the Gantry TV replay then at the chaos that has occurred behind. Conor Melia we're looking at on the race start, and you can see a couple of cars in front. Slow start there for Tony Stack, and he drops down the order, but that doesn't even seem to be the cause of the incident. There we go, that'll do it, and round they go. I think it was Dara Halley who might have caused that one initially.
Kevin Joyce, I think, Evan.
Yeah, and Kevin got around as well. I have to say,
Halley.
Conor did quite well there to recover, but unfortunate for Kevin and for Dara Halley, both out of this one.
Yeah, unfortunate, but it could have been a whole lot worse. We saw a lot of cars streaming in there, but I suppose people being cautious and careful on the opening lap, making sure that there's trying to stay in it. Now, Evan Walsh is, he might be 11th on the grid, but he's actually second amongst the Honda Civics at the moment, staying truly loyal to the brand of car that he previously owned is Evan in the 42 car, and he's getting a little bit tail happy there as we go down Duffus Dip and towards McIntyre. Dave Collier now trying to mount a challenge. I think it was Dave got out to a poor start in that one.
Sorry.
He is down one place now, but he's battling to try and stay where he is. He's back now where they started, as he a little bit of a hip and shoulder between himself and Simon Hutchings, who slots back in ahead of David Prunty. Jordan Kelly is up to 7th position. Now he's up 2 places, Jordan. He's actually swapped Finlay Melvin. Finlay started 7th, he's in 9th, but Finlay now is just overtaken Peter McCann. So there is a little bit of movement, but overall we're starting to see a trade emerge, and we're starting to see an enormous gap between Ronan and Dan. Ronan really getting the hang of things early on.
Yeah, I'm sure Peter McCann is not going to get annoyed about the fact he's just been overtaken by Finlay Melvin, and he's absolutely not going to be putting the hammer down to try and re-overtake him. Well, he doesn't even need to, because Finlay's made the mistake of his own. Is that a commentator's curse? I'm not too sure, it might be. But Peter gets ahead, as does Brandon McCaughan, as does Evan Walsh. Race leader Ronan Doherty, what a phenomenal start from him. He's recovered from his tonsillitis, and I tell you what, even if he wasn't, it seems like he'd still be in a comfortable race lead. The pace is extraordinary for Ronan, and he is leading by 1.1 seconds around such a small circuit. Bar a mistake, which are so easy to come by here at this circuit, it looks like he almost has this one in the bag.
Yeah, he looks very comfortable, I have to say, does Ronan Doherty. I'm not really sure you could put the commentator's curse on somebody who had almost 100 off-tracks in practice, to be fair. I don't think you can saddle yourself with that one. But Ronan, away down the road.
I wonder did someone have 100 off-tracks in practice? We haven't mentioned it yet.
Yeah, well, it is an unusual amount, as Dylan McClements, absolute. Look at that in the background from Brandon McGaughan. That is WRC levels of airtime we're seeing here from Brandon going across the curbs. It's kind of like part British touring car, part Rally of Finland. That section through Clark Chicane at the bottom of the track, as Brandon tries to move down the inside of Peter McCann on the hairpin. And if you're going to get it done, this is a good place to do it. Brandon hugs the inside. It means he's going to have the inside once again going down to Duffus Dip, but Peter got a better exit. McCann, the Laois native, trying to overtake McGaughan, who's going to stick with it, but no, Brandon's just had to cede the place. But good battling there between those two, as things are as you were. Finlay Melvin now 4 places. He's really the biggest loser in the top 10, but 1st to 6th have stayed exactly where they are, which is a very unusual start, Evan.
It is. It's rather calm, isn't it? All is calm on the western front, and Doherty leading by under a second now. Dan Mole 0.3 of a second quicker on the last lap. Wayne Douglas matching Ronan Doherty's pace. They're all sort of spaced out up the front. The real battle coming between McCann and McCaughan. McCaughan thinks he's about halfway through Lewis Ram at the Monte Carlo Rally with some of these jumps over the curbs. Evan Walsh and Finlay Melvin just sitting behind, maybe hoping for a mistake, and Rory O'Shea as well, just sat there hoping for something to happen. But it's all very, very quiet for a Knockhill race.
Yeah, very quiet. And very, I suppose, maybe if we were earlier on in the season, we would see more incident. We perhaps could still see some incident, but I suppose Ronan getting away so quickly from the line meant that there's really nobody accordioning behind him. Everyone seems to be able to be running their kind of race pace without kind of getting in each other's way, which is interesting. That is an interesting, speaking of interesting, that was an interesting line. I think that was Dave Collier who went left front tyre through the chicane. He almost went so far right that he didn't actually end up taking any part of the corner through that. 6 minutes in, and unusually we don't have incidents to look back on, things to talk about. A quiet one for the stewards thus far. This man is the talking point thus far. Oh, that's a great graphic. You can see the gap starting to emerge, and every single lap Ronan is just chipping away more and more away from Dan Mole. Oh, sorry, it's Dan Mole, sorry, is actually chipping away at Ronan Doherty. So at one point Ronan had a huge gap. Oh, he's have to make a mistake. Ronan Doherty making a mistake, and Dan Mole is through. We didn't expect to see that happen. Ronan looked very, very comfortable in the opening laps, but Dan has clawed it back. I wonder, has something happened to Ronan's tyres? Has he overheated the tyres? Because he is struggling there, and all of a sudden now Dan Mole takes the lead for the first time in quite some time.
Yes, that is a horrible moment for Ronan Doherty. He lost a load of time in the last 2 laps and then makes that mistake, slides off heading through the Clark corner, turn number 7, and Dan Moll gets through. Let's have another look at it. It was just driver error from Ronan Doherty, I think, here, and nothing broken the car. It's sim racing at the end of the day, and I just touched that gravel, did he, a little bit on the turn in? I think he did, and then had to cut across the corner, and that allowed Dan Moll to go through. He's now going to be under pressure for Wayne Douglas, and despite us giving out about this one, it's spiced up and we now have a battle for the race lead.
Yeah, it's starting to get a bit more interesting now, and that move is obviously going to start pushing back everyone else. So Wayne is going to be taking his aim now, seeing that there's 2 cars in front of him battling. Dara Halley's up the road here. He's a lapped car in the orange Halfords liveried Audi RS3 TCR car. Yeah, it just goes to show you that even the best could be put under pressure, and that Brabham Clark curve is an interesting one because you're kind of approaching the corner at an angle, so you're not being able to hit the corner flush at the angle that you'd like, so you're having to dice a little bit. And Evan flashing his lights interestingly there. He tried to put a bit of pressure, I think, on Peter McCann, or at least maybe he's just asking Peter to help him a little bit as Brandon goes left and right to try and put some pressure on him. Brandon has Rory O'Shea behind him as well. There's Dara Halley getting out of the way in the 26 car, just about of Wayne Douglas. It's a bit of a difficult situation for Dara to be in, caught on the racing line. That's going to open the door now for Ronan to try and move down the outside here in the hairpin chicane. It's going to be a difficult one. Will he try to switch back? I think he did try it, but then close it off. Wayne Douglas then going into the right rear corner of the number 7 car, but thankfully for both, Ronan managing to keep it on track, and they live to fight another day. So this race now, Evan, has spiced up in a big way in the last lap of the country where the tikka masala was invented. So it is quite fitting that the race would spice up here.
You just wanted to just throw that one in, didn't you? That's like me with my stupid, unnecessary name facts. There goes Rory O'Shea. And by there goes, off the circuit there goes, as Brandon McCaulton comes through, and that promotes him to 10th position. Dan Moll is in the lead of this one by 0.3 of a second. Wayne Douglas 4/10 off as there's more gravel kicked up. Doherty has one more lap to try and retake what looked to be almost his race win confirmed. But Dan Moll, a bit slow through there, a little bit off the apex. So Ronan Doherty's got to try to get right on his tail, potentially in towards that final corner of Taylor's, and try and overtake the race leader. As we said, Dan Moll hasn't won since round 2. Doherty hasn't won, Moll hasn't won since round 3. Doherty hasn't won since round 2. A lot on the line here. Dan Moll slow through turn number 1 and turn number 2. That gives Ronan Doherty an opportunity, and the 62 seems to be struggling a little bit on this lap, maybe feeling the pressure a tad. Doherty was a tenth quicker last time round, but that's a slide from Ronan Doherty. It's well held, had to use all of his skill through there, and that might compromise him through the next part of the track, put him under pressure from Wayne Douglas behind, let alone attacking Dan Moll. Needs the slipstream to work wonders here, does Ronan Doherty, if he wants to get close enough in towards the final corner, and there's absolutely not enough asphalt between now and the apex of turn number 9 for him to lunge up the inside, bar a horrendous exit for Dan Moll, which I don't think he's got. He's looking like he's going to take the race victory here, a flash at the lights, and he can't believe his luck. Capitalised on the Ronan Doherty mistake. Dan Moll wins heat number 1.
Yeah, patience pays off for Mould in the end, who bid his time and waited for that Doherty mistake, was just eeping away at the gap all the time. I thought that Ronan might have had an opportunity to maybe send it down the inside going into McIntyre, but do remember that the race results of this race will set the grid for the next race, so still plenty of opportunity for Ronan in the number 7 car to mount a challenge on Dan Mould once again. But when we look at how well Ronan got off the line, it certainly seems that if we have the same next time around, Dan is going to be put under serious pressure, and we could potentially see a 15-minute battle between these two.
We could, and that would be very, very entertaining. Here comes Conor Melia, comes home in 20th. Not the result he would be looking for. A disappointing end to heat number 1 for Melia, but plenty of opportunities to recover from it. Jamal Gandor had an interesting heat, and for what seems like the 100th time this season, made contact with Emma Dempsey. Emma not too happy after being spun by Jamal, so the stewards might have to intervene between them two. Seems like we have fisticuffs time and time again. It is like the Scottish National League, as we alluded to earlier. Dan Mould, your race winner. Ronan Doherty second. Wayne Douglas third. Then it is Oscar Mangan, Dylan McClements, Robbie Callaghan, Jordan Kelly, Peter McCann, Evan Walsh, Brandon McCaughan to round out your top 10. Then there's Rory O'Shea, Finlay Melvin, Dermot Toomey, Dave Collier, Simon Hutchings, Tony Stack, David Prunty, Danny Dempsey, Phil Upson and Conor Melia 46 seconds off the race lead. And then below Conor it was Jamal Gandor, Nathan Sweeney, Emma Dempsey, Kevin Joyce, Darragh Halley and of course no entry from Sean McClements. An interesting end to heat number 1. That leads to a nice one here for heat 2.
Yeah, we're looking forward to this. Obviously, Sean McClement's not gridding, so it will take a little bit of time for us to get going. But I think Emma Dempsey's going to be filing for a restraining order soon from Jamal Gandor, given how much he's given her grief over the course of this championship.
Yes, potentially even a little bit more than that as the 5 red lights come on once again here in Dunfermline and we go racing at Knockhill. Great launch off the line from Ronan Doherty. He just gets these tyres fired up the right amount, clutch bite point perfect and now goes for the outside line heading through toughest dip at turn number 1. Very difficult corner to make a move, but Ronan Doherty with a piece of skill almost pulls it off. Defended very well indeed by Dan Mould and that shoves Doherty off the track as Wayne Douglas gets through. Doherty immediately swipes over to cover off Oscar Mangan. Doesn't want to allow Mangan, a championship rival, through that easy, and he doesn't. Dylan McClements bobbles along the gravel, even more so Rory O'Shea channels his inner Rally Wexford and skates along the outside of the Brabham Straight, gets just about back on it, and a job well done by Rory.
Yeah, if Rory tried that at the actual rally at Wexford, he would have a very unhappy farmer in his midst because he tore up some piece of that Knockhill circuit. Other than that, though, relatively straightforward for most. Finlay Melvin, once again, unfortunately, caught up in an incident. Don't say we didn't anticipate it, folks. So he is down in 23rd place now. Danny Dempsey also caught up in some shenanigans, so he is down 3 places. Dermot Toomey down 4 places. Jamal Gandor up 5. And Emma Dempsey is well behind him on track, so at least she can breathe a sigh of relief. Dave Collier up 3, Brandon McCaughan up 1, as is the man on your screen at the moment, Jordan Kelly. He's up 1 place to 6, but looks like he's going to lose that immediately as I say it, as Robbie Callaghan swoops down the inside, and he is going to get the job done, I think, here through Clark Curve. So 1.5 minutes into this 15-minute race, already plenty of incident, but for Ronan Doherty, a frustrating one, Evan. Tried to make the move. Oh, that's very tight for Jordan Kelly, almost running into the back of Dylan McClements in the hairpin. You could see the accordion effect there as the gaggle behind him tried to avoid contact. Thankfully, everyone getting through in one piece, but as I go back to it, Ronan Doherty, frustrating for him, Evan, after that move to be shoved out by Wayne Douglas, but all is fair in love and touring car racing.
Yeah, going to be very frustrated with that one. It was a good initial attack on Dan Mould, but Douglas just barreled it down the inside, made contact and shoved Doherty off. Ronan did very well not to lose more than just one spot, and there we go. It's time to avenge his losses as Wayne Douglas makes a mistake. Doherty dives straight down the inside and bang! Contact made! Snaps the car, pins the throttle, saves it beautifully, but that's going to cost him even more time. Now going to be under pressure from Dylan McClements, and he tried to push Wayne Douglas off in the way Wayne Douglas pushed him, but unfortunately 2 wrongs don't make a right. He went very rapidly to the right, but saved it nicely, and he has just stayed in front of Oscar Mangan, has Ronan Doherty. It's a right squabble here for 6th position, led by Robbie Callaghan, but Jordan Kelly has the inside.
Yeah, it turns out 2 wrongs actually do make a right, but in the most literal sense of the term, not quite in the sense that it was initially meant, as a little bit of a hip and shoulder from Jordan Kelly to push out Robbie Callaghan. And Ronan, he saw that's not great from Brandon, going straight across the curb, cutting the inside chicane, and he's firing across track, and you can see Robbie flashing the lights in anger at that move from Brandon. I don't think there was any malice intended from Brandon, who just went too hard over the chicane and spat him right out across the track. Same thing happening to Peter McCann, who almost goes into the back of Brandon, as it all gets very untidy here up in the Scottish lowlands. So once again, Wayne Douglas and Ronan Doherty getting involved with each other. I can see why Ronan saw the opportunity, but unfortunately for him in this sense, he just wasn't quite far alongside enough to get the contact that he needed to push Wayne Douglas out, and eventually he's going to have to settle again. But he's cutting down that gap once again on Wayne Douglas, who himself is cutting down a little bit on Dan Mould. So still plenty of time for both Douglas and Doherty to mount a challenge on our Race 1 winner.
Yeah, Ronan Doherty probably driving furious at this point because he's lost out big time in this race as Evan Walsh hops over that curve, runs a little bit wide in his attack on Peter McCann. 4 minutes gone, Dan Mould race leader, then Douglas in second, Doherty in third. This is a little bit more what we were expecting from Knockhill, and it's been a great old tussle in the midfield here between an awful lot of very fast drivers. Robbie Callahan looking to try and make a move, but couldn't do so. It was very close between McCaughan and McCann. Robbie Callahan heading into last week heading into Thruxton, of course. Sorry, heading into last week's round at Snetterton. Was Oulton Park. Wow, that was really bad.
It's okay,
wasn't
just keep
that was
going,
really
Evan.
bad.
You'll get to it eventually. We'll
I've
just
looked
call
at my
stop when
notes
you
and
call
I
out
have
the
the
right one.
results for Knockhill written down. That's where I've gone wrong. See, that was very difficult to get the results for Knockhill at 7 o'clock this evening. But look, I have my ways. Last week at Oulton Park.
Confirmed RTA is fixed because Evan
Oh
already
yeah,
has the results for
yeah.
Knockhill.
Finley's winning heat 3, by the way, lads.
Yeah.
Just thought
Okay.
I'd say it. Just thought I'd say it. The point I was trying to make is Callahan was leading heading into last round, so he's trying to make up from the points he lost there. David Prunty, another man who exits the circuit and swiftly rejoins it with a bit of a slide, and he's lost a spot to Dara Halley. Dave Collier looking to defend from Tony. Oh, there we go. He's no longer lost the spot. He's just been hit into the corner by the rear of, I think that was Kevin Joyce, and Kevin's poor season gets even worse.
Yeah, frenetic it has been thus far, but yeah, Kevin trying to capitalise on David Prunty's error, and then Dara Halley joins the race. They're going 3 wide into the hairpin, and Dara, in fairness, it's actually Dara goes into the corner of Kevin, as you saw, who goes into Dave Prunty, so it's not Kevin's fault, but going 3 wide, Dara joining the party, and I always think in these situations, it's on the car who joins last to make sure that we all get through safely, because you're the one that's decided to make it a 3 wide situation. So I think, unfortunately, in Dara's case, in both instances, this is on him. Going back to the front, and Wayne Douglas now, it's just, you can see on your timing screen, the gap between himself and Ronan Doherty is really tight now. He's going to have to hold on for another 8.5 minutes, if my maths are right, to hold off Ronan, who set the last fastest lap thus far with a 51.3. A little bit of a mistake there. Ronan is going to push him back. And Evan, unusual actually, Ronan's been making a few mistakes around this track. Now, off tracks are a very common occurrence here. Just looking at Dara Halley has 7 thus far, so he's potentially under pressure. But unusual to see Ronan making kind of so many little silly mistakes over the course of these 7 minutes.
Yeah, I think I harped on for all 15 minutes in qualifying about how consistent he's been this season and how little mistakes, bar a few, he's had, and it's been the total opposite here this evening. He's been slightly all over the place, and it's cost him points. It cost him 2 points in heat number 1, might cost him 4 here in heat number 2 if he can't find a way past Wayne Douglas. But the fact he's clawed in 7/8 of a second as quick as he has makes me think he is going to find a way through. And Douglas pulls out of the way, might have got a slowdown there, and Ronan finds a way through. Arguably the easiest overtake of his RTA career so far.
I suspect so, yeah. That's the only reason I can imagine, unless Wayne decides that, look, I'm actually... Oh, there's Robbie. He's just about to hold on to it, Robbie. In fairness to Robbie Callahan, I'm not sure what caused that. Was it cause or effect? As once again, we could potentially have a 3-wide situation with Evan Walsh going down the inside. Rory O'Shea deciding discretion, the better part of valour. And instead, he's going to try and mount a challenge going down the main straight. So once again, these 3 involved in more battling. Evan Walsh on the inside. Robbie Callahan on the outside. And Rory O'Shea providing a little bit of a push there. These guys aren't geographically too far away from each other, Evan in Clonmel and, of course, Rory in Wexford. So kind of ganging up a little bit on Robbie Callahan here. Robbie doing exceptionally well to hold on to that. We might have a chance to look at what caused that incident to Robbie earlier as Brandon tries to put a little bit of pressure on Jordan Kelly, who's doing well thus far in 6th position, is Jordan Kelly. But yeah, it's 8 off tracks, by the way, for Evan. He is one of the highest offenders, if not the highest offender now in this race. So these guys are still teetering on the edge of a potential slowdown. Slowdown's at 15x, we do remind you. Sorry, not a slowdown, a drive-through at 15x, which would, of course, ruin your race given how close this field is separated and how tight this lap is. Ronan Doherty now 8/10, but that gap is closing rapidly between Ronan and Dan Mould. So definitely, Evan, I suspect to see a challenge between these guys before we get to the end of this one.
Yeah, Dan did his personal best on the last lap, which is 0.3 of a second slower than Ronan Doherty's personal best still. So Ronan is clawing in, and come maybe minute 12, 13 of this race, he might be able to launch an attack on Dan Mould. You can just see him slowly catching, and that gap is visibly getting closer and closer. Again, caught him on the last lap, just by 1/10 of a second, under that even, but still catching him. And all those under 10ths of a second will add up. Dan Mould in the race lead, Ronan Doherty second, Wayne Douglas in third, and it is Mangan, McClements, Kelly, McCaughan, McCann, Callaghan, Walsh, and it is the usual suspects at the front of this one. Oscar Mangan in fourth hasn't really had much to say in this race so far. He also hasn't won since Snetterton, and I tell you what, his championship challenge might be taking a bit of a hit here if Dan Mould and Ronan Doherty keep outscoring him in the way that they have been.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for Oscar. Obviously, we've talked about it before in terms of his ability in these TCR cars and his understanding of the setup of these cars as well, which can hand him an advantage over the course of an 8-race or an 8-round championship. But yeah, Oscar came in blitzing pace, kind of what we expected of Oscar as the highest I-rated Irish man. And he just hasn't been able to try and convert that. He's been caught up in a couple of incidents over the course of the last couple of weeks, not necessarily all his own making, but sometimes you need a little bit of luck as well. Oscar not able to convert when he needs it, and now when he's having a couple of clean races, he can't find the pace to break into the top 3. So that will be worrying for Oscar in the 99 car. Now, we do remind you, he's in the Honda Civic, and Hondas aren't doing particularly well in this particularly this evening, but overall in this championship it seems to be the lesser performing of the 4 cars. So Oscar slightly hamstringing himself there, but at this point it's too late to kind of change car and release all your championship points. So Oscar has to try and stick with what he has and do the best of it that he can, but he's struggling to find pace here, Evan, which is rarely something you would attribute to the 99 car.
It is. Now, it's interesting you mentioned the car there, because the Hyundai is a lot better over the curbs, and of course one of the talking points we're talking about tonight is how and what you need to use the curbs pretty much in these cars. All top 3 are in the Hyundai Elantra, so they will have that advantage of going over the curbs. Oscar is probably actually doing a good job, to give him credit, in that Honda compared to the rest of the Hondas on this grid. Speaking of one of the rest of the Hondas, that's Evan Walsh, who's the 3rd car in this fight. That is Peter McCann in front of him. In the pits, so that's going to be a drive-through, I think, for Evan Walsh. It says on our timing screen he has 12, but has come into the pit lane, so that's going to drop him down the order.
Yeah, our timing screens when it comes to off tracks aren't necessarily always the best, and usually tend to underestimate rather than overestimate the amount of off tracks. But it was something I'd highlighted earlier that Evan was the worst offender. Also there is Dara Halley, he's on 10 at the moment, while Wayne Douglas in 3rd position by our timing screen has 8. So
contact made.
That's contact between Dan Mould and Ronan Doherty. Is Ronan going to give that back? He doesn't seem like he's interested in giving it back, so Dan will not be happy about that at all. We're going to have a look at an instant replay for that one, Evan.
Yeah, let's have a look and see what happened between these two. Who's the perpetrator in this one? So Mould runs wide, and Doherty is into the slipstream. This is about how close you need to be to make an overtake in towards the Taylor's corner, the final corner. Ronan dives down the inside. Dan turns in and kind of cuts across Ronan a little bit there. It's interesting to, or I should say, it's difficult to maybe pin the blame on one there, but Ronan obviously feels it was Dan's fault, and he's not going to hand that position back, which is an interesting decision. You almost would have thought with his pace advantage, he would have handed it back to cover himself off from getting a 15-point penalty, and it's better to lose 2 rather than 15. But he's staying in front, he's leading by 1.5 seconds, and he's going to try and pull a gap. That was Robbie Callaghan you saw running wide, losing the position to Rory O'Shea.
Yeah, Robbie down in 10th now. I'll keep an eye. Peter McCann are always the inevitably and invariably fastest in practice, can never somehow convert that to qualifying. I can't quite put my finger on
I
why.
actually think he was genuinely quickest in practice this time as well, because he was... Oh, he wasn't. Okay, no, we've just been told he wasn't. He's still a fraud.
I suspect Peter took the national line through this circuit, having earlier denied that there was a second layout of this track. As a matter of fact, Peter, there's 4 layouts of this track. There's the international clockwise and anti-clockwise, and the national clockwise and anti-clockwise, which takes a slightly earlier turn than the hairpin, and there's a rallycross circuit as well. So Peter not only gaslighting some of the members of this league as to the existence of a second layout, but then used that second layout to fraud his way to the top of the practice standing. So overall, very poor sportsmanship there from Peter, giving us a slight inkling as to why Iron Tiles decided to drop their sponsorship a number of seasons ago.
How does it always come back to Iron Tiles?
How doesn't it? Ronan Darty, yeah, I suppose if there's any, as he's about to cross the line here, Evan, I'll leave you see us out, and then I'm going to make the comment that I'm going to make about this, but I think Ronan in this situation is right not to give the position back.
Well, here comes Ronan Darty heading through the final corner then, and this is arguably how comfortably he wanted heat number 1. It is going to be a 3rd win of the season for Ronan Darty, ahead of Dan Mould and Wayne Douglas in 2nd and 3rd, and it's a lot closer between the top 3. Douglas will come home in 3rd for a 2nd time, and then Dan Mould will take 2nd. It's going to be Oscar Mangan in 4th. The battle still raging on here between Dave Collier and Tony Stack. Tony Stack looks for the outside here on Dave. Is Dave going to lock a break? No, he doesn't. Holds it lovely at the apex, and even gets a little bit of a nudge through the corner by Kerryman Tony Stack. Dave's played his cards beautifully there to keep the position. Nailed his braking, nailed the apex of the corner, didn't allow Tony to get under him, and has taken a nice 11th position there. Here comes home hero Melvin, who's just bringing home Dermot Toomey behind. So a 15th place finish for Finley Melvin, and off the track goes Kevin Joyce once again. Unfortunately, the theme of the season for him.
Yeah, a really frustrating one for Kevin, obviously, tonight, caught in that incident earlier on. Coming back to what I was saying earlier in terms of the Ronan Darty, Dan Mould incident, we didn't get to see, we did get to see a replay of it, but obviously we didn't quite get a kind of an angle that gave us conclusive evidence. It looked, from my point of view, that Dan did slightly cut him off. So in that case, if you're Ronan, if that's what happened, then you just got to drive on. You can't give a guy back a position.
I agree with you.
That you believe isn't your fault. But these are the provisional results anyway, Evan, for the 2nd heat of round 6 of the Motorsport.ie RTA British Touring Car Championship at Knockhill.
Yes, it is Ronan Darty takes the race win, Dan Mould in 2nd, then it is Wayne Douglas, Oscar Mangan, Dylan McClemens, Jordan Kelly, Brandon McCon, Peter McCann, Rory O'Shea, Robbie Callaghan, Dave Collier, Tony Stack, Simon Hutchings, Evan Walsh, Finley Melvin, Dermot Toomey, Conor Melia, Dara Halley, Emma Dempsey, and Kevin Joyce in 20th position. And then a little bit further down in 21st, we have Phil Upson, Nathan Sweeney, Jamal Gandor, David Prunty, and Danny Dempsey. Let's hear from your race winner, heat number 2 then, Ronan Darty. Ronan, congratulations on the win. Just to start off with heat number 1, though, you were leading by about 1.1 seconds, and then it all went down the drain. Talk to us about what happened there.
Yeah, I made myself a good little break, and then I got a slowdown. I was sort of annoyed myself the slowdown wasn't concentrating and dropped it in the gravel while I was turning in. So Dan got past, and then I just couldn't get past him in the end. It's quite hard to overtake around here, so yeah.
Then speaking of overtakes, heat 2, you went for the move down the inside, and a bit of contact was made between yourself and Dan Mould, pushing Dan wide and losing time. What's your take on that one?
Yeah, look, the way I see it, I was fully over to the right. I couldn't go any more right without going up on that massive sausage curb on the inside of the last corner, and my front wheel was further along side of Dan's cars than his rear wheel, so I was up his inside before the contact, and I had the car stopped, but we'll see what stewards say. Like, I'm sure Dan will probably put the incident in because he was flashing his lights at me afterwards, but I just think it's one of those things where I went down the inside, and it is what it is. Like, Wayne went down the inside of me and put me in the gravel, but it's just the sort of the touring car racing.
Championship leader, of course, coming into the round, you'll want to maximise your points haul across all 3 races. You start 8th now on the reverse grid. It's difficult to overtake, you mentioned. What's the plan of action?
Just try not get caught in anything crazy, and just do my best. Sometimes you get unlucky or sometimes you make mistakes, so yeah, just have a bit of fun.
Ronan, thank you very much, and we'll all go well. We'll talk to you afterwards.
Cheers.
So good to hear from Ronan Doherty. Don't think either of the other 2 podium sitters are joining us, but if Dan gets a podium in Heat 3, he'll usually join us afterwards.
Yeah, I was hoping that Wayne Douglas might join us because we haven't had an opportunity to talk to him yet in this championship, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk to them and indeed talk to Dan over both of those incidents, because not only whatever about reporting that one at the end, but he's already, Dan Moe, put in an incident between himself and Ronan on the opening lap of the second heat. So 2 potential incidents between our 2 championship front runners, or 2 of our championship front runners, should I say, to discuss for the stewards. Thanks very much to Johnny Hollywood, who says, did I miss a bit of drama? Well, Johnny, if you know yourself, if you've missed any amount of minutes in the RTA championship, the likelihood is that you've missed some drama. But really, Evan, I think on the whole, the driving has been very good. We've seen some robust driving, some robust attacking and defending, but overall the standard of driving has been quite good this evening, given how difficult the track is.
Standard has been quite good, and we usually get that in RTA come the end of the seasons. We get a nice bit of, get nice driving standards. We usually always have a conversation after round 1. Oh, we're in for a rough season with standards, and it usually always picks up, and it has picked up here tonight once again in Knockhill. As you mentioned, it's a very difficult circuit. It's not easy to battle here. It's not easy to overtake, as championship leader Ronan Doherty mentioned. But the standard has been quite good. I'm seeing someone out for practice laps, and I believe that is Sean McClemens, who's managed to fix someone's car and make the grid for heat number 3.
Yeah, great to see 23 car back, and as he just manages to avoid, I think that's Danny Dempsey stopping on the inside of a curb there. But yeah, good to see Sean McClemens out there, and not sure who that is in the background. That is Emma Dempsey, who didn't need any help from Jamal Gondor this time and put it in the wall all by herself. But great to see Sean out on track, and an opportunity, Evan, albeit small, for him to try and get a few points towards his championship, not even championship credentials, but I suppose top 10 really at this point for Sean McClemens.
He got home from his work very quickly, that's all I'm saying. I know how long that drive takes. Peter McCann on pole position for race number 3 then. Brandon McCaughan alongside him. Brandon always springs towards the top of a reverse grid and usually takes that opportunity. Jordan Kelly will start in 3rd, Dylan McClemens 4th, then Oscar Mangan in 5th, Wayne Douglas in 6th, followed by Dan Mould in 7th, and of course Ronan Doherty, who starts in 8th. Then it's Rory O'Shea, Robbie Callaghan, Dave Collier and Tony Stack on the 6th row. It's then Simon Hutchings, Evan Walsh, Finlay Melvin, Dermot Toomey, Conor Mealy, Dara Halley, Emma Dempsey, Kevin Joyce, Phil Upson, Nathan Sweeney, Jamal Gandor and David Prunty in 24th. Then it is a back row of Danny Dempsey and Sean McClemens. Here we go then for the final race of the evening, and arguably the most important one. We go racing here at Knockhill. It's a great launch off the 2nd row for Jordan Kelly. He's immediately closing down Brandon McCaughan. Peter McCann covers off McCaughan in towards turn number 1, and Brandon takes to the pit lane to try and widen the line through Duffus Dip. It's Jordan Kelly in 3rd place, Dylan McClemens in 4th. We're all smooth through. Kevin Joyce running wide a little bit, has to cut across the corner, but everyone else has kept it squeaky clean.
Yeah, Kevin Joyce again running into difficulties. He's found himself all the way down the bottom of the table. Robbie Callaghan also losing out. He's down 4 places. Sean McClements already up 4 places, having only just joined us. He's in 22nd position now, and eyes forward. Sean doing his best last to front challenge. He's going to get doored slightly by Emma Dempsey, who were both on track earlier on, but he has to try and avoid that and get up towards Jamal Gandor. So he's taken one of the expected court proceedings between Emma Dempsey and Jamal Gandor. Let's see if he can take the second, as in the distance there you can see Dara Halley rejoining the track. It's going to be a difficult one for Sean, I have to say, to try and avoid all of the incidents that are inevitably going to come his way, but let's see if he can do it. Peter McCann doing a great job, however. In fairness to Peter, we were slagging him off earlier about his fraudulent practice times, but he certainly has gotten off to a great start in this one, and he does have a very, very long time to hold on, but I suspect Peter will pick his battles in an attempt to try and at least finish within the top 3.
Yeah, great move by Wayne Douglas there down the inside of Oscar Mangan. Really made mincemeat of the one-time RTA champion. Dan Mould is looking to get past as well on the inside line. Ronan Doherty fancy sneaking through as well. No contact made at the apex this time round, and Ronan Doherty's going to hook into the slipstream of Dan Mould in front in the number 62. And try and get the run, but he hasn't. He's actually got a very poor run down the straights as Ronan Doherty, and he's actually under pressure from Rory O'Shea behind, but Ronan can break a lot later, a lot more confidence in towards Duffus Dip, and look at the way he rotates the car through to try and get close to Oscar Mangan. You can just see how smoother through the corners that Hyundai is compared to Oscar Mangan's Honda. Douglas leads Mould. Oh, slide from Rory O'Shea. He's very close to doing a Scandi flick this evening, because he's done every other rally move on the book.
Yeah, I think definitely
in
channeling his inner Colin McRae here in Scotland this evening, as Jordan Kelly goes very late in the brakes, almost clean into the back of Brandon McGahan, but avoids contact as Conor Melia now trying to make a move on Dave Collier further down the grid. Of course, these guys are still in with the shout, particularly Collier, of winning this B championship. Oscar Mangan, now you talked about him earlier on, he's struggling for pace. He's now in 7th position, but for Oscar, we talked about it before, this Honda doesn't like these curbs, and you can see how much more pace Ronan takes as he just, that's almost a little bit of an FU there, a little 2 fingers there, as he went up on 2 wheels just to prove how much better his Hyundai deals with the curbs than the Honda does. Now Peter McCann going to lose out here to Jordan Kelly. Despite his best efforts, Kelly's going to nudge him very gently off the track. There used to be a move back in the Worms for PS1 where you used to be able to prod somebody to their death. That was almost like a Worms-esque prod from Jordan Kelly. As you can see, Peter McCann and Dylan McClements swapping. Right in behind them is Dan Mould, and Dan has been caught up in plenty of incidents this evening. He has to make sure that he's not involved in another one, is Dan Mould, because he's had a good run thus far, but he can still throw it all away. In the final race, he goes for a dive down the inside of Peter McCann, and a touch between the two of them. McCann loses out, and that's fair enough, I think it is, from Mould. He was alongside when the corner came on. The two came together, and it ended up throwing Peter McCann off line, which throws him into the gravel and all the way back down to 7th place. So despite the reverse grid start, Peter finds himself almost exactly where he found himself at the end of race number 2, back down in 7th position, and behind him is Ronan Doherty, who's now battling with Rory O'Shea, but it must have been a mistake from the number 7 car as Rory O'Shea gets ahead. Sorry, Evan, I have been stealing your living there for the last couple of minutes, but plenty of action, and look at that for a name at the top of the timing standings.
Yes, it's Brandon McCaughan who leads. Peter McCann was Douglased in towards turn number 3. Got hit in the same way that Ronan Doherty did, as Brandon McCaughan slides his way through turn number 1 and 2. Here is Tony Stack trying to attack Robbie Callaghan, as we have the 2 tricolours. They've both done it differently, meaning one of them is wrong. Feel free to decide in the comments who has made a mess of their livery. I would...
Tony Stack, even though I know when you look at it from side on, it's in the right direction, but I think if your primary colour should be the colour where the head is.
I would agree with you, but then technically on side profile, his is correct and Robbie's isn't. So.
But that's only if you're looking at it from a certain side. If you're looking at it from the other side.
The other side is the Ivory Coast.
Yeah. So.
But Robbie's is India, so. Are they both wrong?
Yeah, I think they're all wrong. I think what you need to do is you need to have an asymmetric livery in which the side is swapped to be from the back either way, as Dan Mole gets touched in the back from Jordan Kelly, and he spends plenty of time wearing green and gold. They've had a good weekend this weekend, but as we found out, Donegal men are not afraid of a scrap, whether it's on a track, on a football pitch, or indeed in the shop of a petrol station. So Jordan living up to his Donegal name as he continues the fisticuffs on track here at Knockhill, but battling for third position at the moment. So at least in Jordan's case, it could potentially have a positive outcome.
Part of me was kind of glad that that Ulster final did have a scrap, because it's the sort of thing we've been referencing all season. As Dan Mould is looking for a scrap in the final corner once again, he goes for the outside, and Brandon McCaughan still has that outside line and also has the straight line speed side by side as they cross the start-finish line here 6 minutes into the race. Still plenty of time to go. Can Dan brave it out in the brakes? No, he isn't. I don't think any man has enough confidence to flick it round the outside through Duffus Dip at Knockhill in a touring car, even if you are the touring car race that Dan Mould is. Jordan Kelly now, multi-time RTA champ, one of the legends of the series, is putting Dan Mould under a lot of pressure. Dylan McClemens, one of our newer RTA champs, is putting him under pressure. It's all bunched up here in the battle for the race lead, and that's exactly what we want from this Motorsport.ie RTA British Touring Car Championship. Here comes Wayne Douglas looking for the outside on Dylan McClemens. We saw Dylan's defensive masterclass in Snetterton. Can he produce one here in Knockhill? No, as Wayne Douglas just runs it wide, and as I say that, Dylan dives for the apex, gets it stopped and rotates ahead, but crucially doesn't have the slipstream as, oh look at this, Jordan Kelly pulling over to try and tow Dylan McClemens along, give him a bit of a distance tow. Who's going to be braver in towards Duffus? Is it going to be Dylan? Is it going to be Wayne? It looks like it was Dylan who broke later, but Wayne, he does have the confidence to hang it round the outside. Doesn't get it done though, in towards the next corner. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant racing.
Yeah, absolutely superb stuff, and I could say Dylan was probably sweating knowing that who he was sharing the track with. He probably anticipated the gravel to eat him up before long, but he did really well there, did Dylan, to stick in with it. And to be fair to Wayne, great battling from the both of them, superb driving from both, as Rory O'Shea now is trying to mount a challenge on the front. But look at Jordan Kelly now putting Dan Mould under all kinds of pressure, and there's a saying of, you know, you or get off the pot, and if Dan Mould isn't willing or able to take an opportunity to have a swipe off Brandon McCaughan, then Jordan Kelly's going to do it for him.
At least didn't curse this time, Kevin. Job well done. Brandon McCaughan stays in front. Jordan Kelly now second in this race, as there's a bit of a schism in the battle for the race win. It's Dan Mould who is ahead of Wayne Douglas by 1.7 seconds. So Douglas is going to try and... Oh, is he going to do what? Sideways over the curve as we cut to Wayne Douglas. And that's going to invite Ronan Doherty to maybe look for the move. Dylan has been overtaken by Ronan, although probably didn't put up as much a fight as he did to Wayne Douglas. A sideways for Rory O'Shea, and he really is a rally driver here this evening. Cali Rory Van Pera on the second sector. He's fallen down to 10th position as Evan Walsh and Peter McCann go side by side in front. Peter, of course, who started on pole in this one, has fallen to 8th position, and Evan Walsh is looking to attack down towards the first corner, but just doesn't seem to have enough confidence through the corners. Does have the straight line speed, but a lot of work to do if he wants to try and get through the field.
Yeah, unlike Cali Ravampera, Rory's was a forced sideways motion due to contact with other cars on track. So Rory having to get used to that himself, and Evan Walsh. I'm not sure whether it was Evan that caused that contact or indeed Robbie Callan behind him, but certainly judging by how aggressively Rory was battling Evan there, it seems like he has a point to prove as Dan Mould cuts across the track. That is going to be an off track, and that is going to come into play here, folks. We saw Evan Walsh last race going in for a drive-through due to the amount of off-tracks that he has. Surprise, surprise, I'm going to give you one guess as to who is leading the off-track table at the moment in the race, but I think it won't take you very long to figure it out. But his Welsh counterpart, Simon Hutchings, is also extremely high on the off-track count, but it's 6, 6, 4, 5 and 4 for the top 6, so something to keep an eye on as we go through this race.
Yes, it is. Simon Hutchings dropped down the order a little bit there, so was involved in some sort of incident. Brandon McCaughan still in the race lead, just making that TCR 3 times the width that it actually is. keeping Jordan Kelly and Dan Mould right behind. And there's not going to be an overtake attempt from any of them in towards the hairpin. They stay line astern. There is going to be an overtake attempt from Ronan Doherty, though, who gets back past Dylan McClements. And Wayne Douglas has actually pulled out a little bit of a gap on this battle. So he's gone from being absolutely sideways through the Arnold Clark chicane to pulling out a nice little gap. But they're not catching this top three. They've run away with it, and it's a freeway fight for the race win in Heat 3.
Yeah, I'd love to go back and have a look at that Wayne Douglas incident, or indeed the instant that there must have been something that saw Ronan Doherty fall back so much. Perhaps it was a slowdown, but definitely the Wayne Douglas incident to see if there was contact, whether it was cause or indeed effect in terms of Wayne Douglas going sideways through that section. But yeah, definitely it seems like it is a 3-horse race for the win, and then a battle between everybody else, as all three of those cars in shot of Dylan McClements, Oscar Mangan and indeed Peter McCann taking the alternative potentially rally class cross line through the gravel here. Off tracks certainly not being respected to their fullest by these drivers tonight, who do have 15 to play with, but they are being ticked away as the 20 minutes go on. Dan Mould now behind Jordan Kelly, but Jordan himself also isn't able to mount a challenge on Brandon McCahan. And I just wonder, Evan, is it the way that Brandon is maybe lining himself up, that he's, I suppose, the parts where he is slower or he's losing any time, he's losing him in a place where they can't overtake, and then he's able to build a gap in the corners where they could potentially overtake?
Yeah, he's fast through the right places, is Brandon McCahan, and that is allowing him to stay in front. Got one win last season en route to 8th in the championship in the F4s, and he's looking for a win here in the British Touring Car Championship. Dan Mould is looking to try go around the outside of Jordan Kelly, but you've got to wake up early to sweep around the outside of Jordan Kelly like that. And Kelly, look at that, moves and defends to the outside, or to the inside I should say, and Brandon McCahan moves and gives Kelly the slipstream. Dan Mould just has a wall in front of him. There is no way for him to get through unless he breaks about 100 metres later, catch pointed off the circuit. Side by side between Oscar Mangan and Dylan McClements, two drivers who have battled times before here in RTA. Oscar Mangan able to stay in front for now.
Yeah, and we're starting to see drivers becoming a little bit more adventurous when it comes to that Duffus Dip section, to try and see if they can make a move around the outside. But the way it comes into McIntyre then just makes it too difficult to slow right-hander. Dan Mould again trying to mount a challenge. You can see Jordan going down the inside as well, partly to cover off Dan, but also partly to get in the mirrors of Brandon McCahan. And frustrating one for Dan Mould, who couldn't mount a challenge on Brandon, ended up being gazumped by Jordan Kelly, and then is now stuck behind Jordan, who is also unable to do a job on Brandon. And in fairness to Brandon, it's been a superb drive from the driver who finished 7th in the second race. He's only up 1 place, ladies and gents. He hasn't come from finishing in 1st and 2nd in the last couple of races, and as Evan said, he won only 1 race last year, and hopefully for his own sake he can replicate the same as Dan Mould tries to move down the inside of Jordan. And it's a day late and $1 short for Mould, who eventually gets away with it. But now here's Wayne Douglas with a little flash to say, remember me, I'm ready to go for a move now too. He tries to go down the inside, but a little bit too late for Wayne. But a little signs of desperation, Evan, from Dan Mould here on Jordan Kelly.
Yeah, Dan and Wayne both flashing the headlights at the two drivers in front of them. Must be a speed camera van nearby or something of the sorts. Rory O'Shea and Peter McCann side by side in towards the first corner, and Rory O'Shea in the high pre looking for the move, and he's going to have the inside line on McCann, and job done for Rory O'Shea. Nice clean overtake. Gets it done fairly easily. Brandon McCahan still in front, and he's actually got 0.5 of a second ahead of Jordan Kelly. So Kelly defends once again. It's that defensive weave, just commits to it at the right time, and Dan Mould is going to get very frustrated here very quickly, and you can already see him pushing the Galvin through the corners. Is Dan Mould able to dive here as he's being attacked by Wayne Douglas, and Ronan Doherty is on the scene as well? Mould, a sneaky look, had a little look, but couldn't find anything. And spins round Jordan Kelly. Looked like Jordan was going to move once again to defend, but Dan was just on his inside. He had a sneaky look, wanted to take a bite, took a bite, and throws Jordan off the plate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's one of those things where in these, with iRacing, with the collision damage model, you can sometimes have a case where the cars almost kind of get stuck together. That's looked that's looks like what happened, that they just kind of fused together a little bit, and then gravity and physics sort of took its toll as the speed started to pick up, as Jordan's rear started to overtake its front. So let's have a look at this. Dan goes down the inside, and yeah, it's a difficult one because obviously Dan has the overspeed, which is what pushed Jordan out. But it's hard to know whether Dan made an attempt to try and break that before, or whether it was just the way the collision damage model works sometimes, and sometimes cars just get stuck together, and despite Dan's best intentions, he ended up spinning Jordan around. So we'll have to have a look at the replay later on. That's for the stewards to decide. But unfortunately for Jordan Kelly, Evan, after such a good running, he finds himself way back now.
It's one for the stewards, that's for sure, and it's very, very disappointing for Jordan Kelly. Brandon McCaughan is also going to be very disappointed because his wingman almost in this fight is gone. He now has Dan Mould, who was a free shot at him for the victory here at Knockhill in the Motorsport.ie RTA British Touring Car Championship, and you can already see a bit of bump drafting happening down towards the final corner, and the number 62 pivots to the outside. He's going to try the long way here, doesn't go for the switchback, does eventually go for the switchback, but Brandon hit his apex nicely, so Dan's not going to be able to find that one. Commits to the inside line early, and Dan Mould is going to have the run here, it seems. Brandon will have the preferred line, but Dan Mould has the confidence, and he's going to try and lunge one down the inside here, it seems. Doesn't break late enough. Brandon slides it for the first corner once again, rally style like we've seen so many times tonight, and just about stays in front. For Brandon's sake, he needs Wayne to try one of his traditional moves down the inside in towards turn number 7.
Yeah, definitely a trademark Wayne Douglas move would come in handy here for Brandon McGaughan, but you can see McGaughan, he's definitely very aware of the 62 car in his mirrors. He overstepped the mark, got himself out of position going into the corner, trying to defend from that late lunge down the inside from Mould, which meant that he almost went straight through Duffer's dip and just about held onto it on the outside. But with 2.5 minutes left, it is getting extremely tight at the front.
It is. This is brilliant from Brandon, as Ronan Hederman tells us. Nathan Sweeney's in a very bad spot, and I have to agree, he could be a factor in this one, and they've caught him in a horrible part of the circuit. Is Nathan? Oh, is Brandon? There's contact made between the two. Brandon does excellent to save it, as Nathan is not pulling out of the way. There is technically blue flags here, so he would have to move, and he's not, and that's going to box in Dan Mould, and this gives Brandon McCaughan a chance to make a move. It does, and Nathan does eventually get out of the way. Didn't do a half bad job there, did Nathan, to let them through. And now battle resumes and chaos emerges here in Knockhill to end what's been a fabulous race. Is Dan Mould able to go to the outside? He isn't, but Brandon's made a mistake under the brakes. He's got to get away with it, and Wayne Douglas decides to swoop down the inside of his teammate. What a brilliant move from Wayne Douglas, one of his finer ones in a day that's been filled with controversial ones, and that is a brilliant overtake. They're now side by side though, and this could allow Brandon to run up the road a little bit. Dan Mould knows that he needs to keep his car in here if he wants a shot at the win. He does, and as I said it earlier, who has the confidence to go around there? The answer, Dan Mould does.
Yeah, what an absolutely incredible series of corners. And Brandon McGaughan now finds himself 7/10 of a second, but another mistake from Mould down the outside. That's going to leave Wayne Douglas through on the inside, and Douglas gets the move done going through a Clark curve. That opens the doors well for Ronan. He's going to try and move round the outside. He's going to follow Wayne Douglas down through the hairpin, and behind him as well is Oscar Mangan. So they're all nibbling at the toes of Dan Mould, and Ronan getting the job done. So having done so well to compensate that second position, Dan throws it all away with a bad chicane section. And look at Brandon McGaughan now. He has one more lap. He would desperately love if that white flag was checkered, but it's not. And that huge contact between Ronan and Dan Mould. Dan just staying in it, and these two have been going at it back and forth over the course of this evening. We'll have to have a look at the replay of that one. I'm sure we will when we do the interviews. But Ronan coming right across Dan Mould in the corner there, and Dan not giving up either. So interested to see what the stewards have to say about that. But that'll be one of a number of instances between these two the stewards are going to have to look at, Evan.
What a brilliant last lap this has been. Oscar Mangan has got fourth ahead of Ronan Doherty. That could be crucial for the championship. But Brandon McCaughan through the final corner. He won Heat 3 last week. He's going to win Heat 3 this week. What a masterclass from Brandon McCaughan. just committed to every corner and stayed in front. It is a brilliant second win of the season and one that's well deserved to elevate him in the championship. Wayne Douglas will get second and Dan Mould will just about get third, but it is a case of what could have been for Dan. 20 minutes he tried to overtake Brandon and Jordan, eventually spun Jordan round and could not get past McCaughan. It's going to be then Dylan McClements in 6th, Callaghan 7th, Walsh 8th, O'Shea 9th, and Finlay Melvin. We gave him stick all evening. He's decided he's going to try prove us wrong a little bit and gets another top 10 finish this season.
Yeah, great stuff for Finlay and his, I suppose, home track in terms of iRacing, excuse me. Yeah, very, very untidy, very chaotic, frenetic last 2 laps there. Obviously all caused by Nathan Sweeney, not Nathan's fault necessarily, but Nathan just finding himself in a bad spot. And when you have a gaggle of cars coming at you on this Knockhill circuit, really, you have to almost vacate the tarmac to try and make things go smoothly. There's nowhere Nathan could have gone. But as you say, a masterclass from Brandon McCaughan. And once again, Evan, we have another new winner, not a new winner in terms of the RTA series, but another different winner of a race in this championship, a championship that never fails to surprise us.
What a brilliant race that was. Let's just run through the full results before we get chatting about that. We have a lot to talk about. Brandon McCaughan, race winner. Wayne Douglas 2nd, Dan Mould 3rd, then Oscar Mangan in 4th, Ronan Doherty in 5th, and it is Dylan McClements, Robbie Callaghan, Evan Walsh, Rory O'Shea and Finlay Melvin. Jordan Kelly in 11th, ahead of Conor Melia, Sean McClements, who, that's a great fight back for Sean, up 13 positions around a circuit that's not easy to overtake at. Dave Collier in 14th, and it's Simon Hutchings, Dara Halley, Emma Dempsey, Phil Upson, Nathan Sweeney and Dermot Toomey in 20th position. So Nathan now I think is in the plus points, hopefully. Kevin Joyce 21st, then it was Danny Dempsey. Peter McCann had to back out. He said one of his children is unwell, so hope all good is there, Peter. And Tony Stack in 24th with Jamal Gandor coming home in 25th, and unfortunately no running for David Prunty. Let's hear from your race winner then, Brandon McCaughan, after that brilliant performance. Brandon, hello, congratulations, a brilliant win for you, your 2nd of the season. Jordan and Dan threw everything at you, you just about stayed in front.
Yeah, that was a difficult one. The Elantra just doesn't seem to have any pace, and to be fair to Jordan, the Audi doesn't either. It was kind of, I was giving Jordan the tow wherever I could, because I knew I stood more chance with him. The Audi seemed to be bad through the chicane, and me slow in the straight, so when Jordan eventually got spun, I was just hanging on for dear life. The Velociter was quite the speed advantage coming up the hill, so just had to really park the car on the inside everywhere I could, and a couple of wee touches with that, and I thought I was going to go around, but managed to fair play to Dan for not doing anything stupid.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments there where you were sideways, you looked like you were almost backwards through some of the corners. Were you composed the whole time, or coming into the last laps, was there a little bit of panic?
I wouldn't say panic, I was just driving the wheels off it, to be fair. I was just trying to find time wherever I could. I was just, by the end there, I was just throwing it at the chicane, and hoping it stuck, and luckily it did, and then through the first couple of corners at a couple of moments, but stayed composed, just maybe didn't look it from the outside.
In terms of the championship then, I know you were a bit more confident last season in the F4s compared to coming into this season. You've put yourself in a really nice position to challenge for it heading into the final few rounds. Are you still going to take it by a race-by-race basis, or is there maybe some ambition coming into your mind?
Yeah, I mean, a top three would be nice. It seems to be in the dry. The Elantra struggles a bit, so to be fair, I think there's a good wee battle between me and Dylan and Robbie Callaghan, for best Elantra. I'll be happy if I get that one.
Brandon, thank you very much for that, and congratulations once again on a fabulous performance.
Cheers.
Well, good interview there with Brandon. Great to hear from our race winner. Unfortunately, don't think we're going to get to hear from Dan or Wayne. But Kevin, we were hoping for a close one here tonight. Heat 1, it was looking like, oh, this will be a bit of a dawdle. It was anything but.
No, absolutely not. It was a bit processionary there in the first 5 or 6 minutes, but it all changed up once Ronan made that mistake, and basically it went all over the place from there. Um, it's really hard, I have to say, in terms of a driver of the day. This is an exceptionally difficult one. Like Dylan McClements was strong all evening, but it's very hard to find somebody who consistently did well over the 3 races. Everybody had their moments. Like you could say Jordan Kelly, who drove quite well, and you could say that that wasn't necessarily his fault. What happened? So would we be giving it to him if he hadn't been caught up in that incident with Dan Mould? You could say Wayne Douglas if it wasn't for the fact that he'd been caught up in some incidents. Some might even suggest Finlay Melvin for a top 10 finish in the last race. But I'm finding it exceptionally difficult to think of one driver who is kind of standing out in either series in terms of having a particularly good finish. Like Dave Collier, 14th, Conor Melia went up 5 places.
Jamal
Sean
has
McClements,
suggested Emma Dempsey.
yeah, I think
So
Jamal is.
there's a war going on between those two now.
I, I, I think if Jamal had a shovel, he'd be best put it down at the moment. Because yeah,
Felipe,
I
baby,
won't.
keep it cool.
Keep it cool, Felipe, baby. Yeah, exactly. Um, It's very hard. It really is hard. I mean, if you're looking, maybe Dan Dan a really strong drive again tonight, showing pace again, but obviously Dan is a guy that you'd expect to be in and around there. So I don't know. Help me out here a little bit, Evan. I'm
Will we give it
struggling.
to Finley for the crack?
Let's give it to Finlay for the crack. I will give it to Finlay purely
I've seen a
based
comment
on,
come in for Finley, and I'm going to just run with it.
yeah, it's purely for entertainment purposes.
Yeah, the write up
Um,
for the driver of the day write up could be difficult for this one, but sure, look, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
yeah, we'll have a plan. And more importantly, it's got absolutely nothing to do with me. Look at that collision avoidance, by the way. Like, how could you not give it to him?
Yeah, driver of
Um,
the day.
for the day.
This stream has Finley's been the bread of this stream. If it was a sandwich, because we started off talking about Finley, we're now ending it talking about Finley. Despite all that's happened tonight, Finley Melvin has been the talking point for the most part.
Well, Finley taking driver of the day at his home track of Knockhill. And it is rather fitting that the only Scotsman in the grid picks up driver of the day at the only Scottish venue in the service.
For
Next week, we will be
Scotland.
heading to for Scotland. We head to Silverstone National. That is for our penultimate round. Of course, as ever, that is on the 20th of May, as in next Tuesday. Always Tuesday nights at around 9 o'clock before we finish at Brands Hatch GP. Do remember to go to RTA virtualmotorsport.com for the update on this. And if you're interested in signing up next season, then I do remind you that next season we are moving to once again single seaters, but we are heading stateside for
Yes.
the IndyCar series. So we are heading for IndyCar. It was a toss-up between IndyCar and F4, but we're going to the IndyCar series where we will
Yes.
drive a number of iconic American circuits. I really, really wish, I have to say, that we had an oval version of this. I know we have the Daytona Roval. I would love to see just a Daytona Oval or an Indy Oval, and just do an IndyCar, pure
We are. We're
IndyCar
doing
Oval.
ovals. No, we are doing
What?
ovals. We're doing
Where are
ovals.
we?
We are doing ovals. Yes,
Oh,
we're doing the
yes.
Indianapolis. Can I just put on air? I think we should make it a special event for the Indy Oval and just do an Indy 500. Get rid of the heat nonsense. Just do a flat out Indy 500. We'll get a load of God Bless America on Gantry TV, and we'll have a great time.
I'll tell you what, what date is
I'm
that?
so excited for this, by the way, lads. I
24th.
can't.
Oh, yeah. Am I in the country on the 24th? I think I am. If I'm in the country on the 24th and they change it to an indie special event, we are meeting at somebody's house, bringing beers and doing a
Oh
special
yes.
event
Oh
live
yes.
broadcast on stream. That would
We're
be
heading to
unreal.
Hederman's gaff.
Yeah, everyone to count to Kildare.
If me and
Right.
Sean can turn up randomly at about 11 some evening, we can turn up for a Gantry TV stream. So Andrew, Rob, Peter, if you're listening to this, please, for the love of God, do that. Oh, and
Make it
we'll wear
happen.
the suits as well, because that seems to be one of Andrew's fetishes, is to just
Yeah,
have me and Kevin in a suit.
we'll do that. We can make that happen. Okay. That is all on the horizon. Do head to Motorsport.ie as well for all of the updates on Irish motorsport. Indeed, none of them, I'm sure, as are interesting of the two as the two of us in suits doing a broadcast from Ronan's gaff. But it'll keep you tied over anyway until that inevitability happens. Um, Not entirely sure. We're keeping s- some comment in YouTube, which I haven't been able to read because my YouTube isn't
I'm not exactly going to
updating.
reply to your. Sorry,
Right.
Ronan Hederman has just said, "What's Johnny's talking about?" That we're not going to
Johnny
reply
says,
to that
I'm
on
in
air,
race
Ronan.
control. You might hear a familiar voice on commentary. Right. Now it seems like Johnny's breaking into Ronan's gaff, whether he wants to or not.
He
So,
is, yes. Johnny, you're invited to the indie stream, by the way. You can come with us.
yeah, we'll just move out herself for the night, and we'll put her up somewhere, Ronan. Don't worry, we can use some of the kitty to do it.
Monaghan's
Um,
Harbour Hotel.
okay,
On the off
this
chance
is
anyone watching this is from Nace, I hope you found
this
that funny.
this has completely derailed. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week we are heading to Silverstone National for the penultimate round of the Motorsport RTA, Motorsport.ie, sorry, RTA British Touring Car Championship. Thank you so much for joining. We will look forward to your company next week, and indeed in a couple of weeks' time when we're all in Hederman's gaff. But until then, have a great week. Have a safe week. Stay safe on the roads, for God's sake. There's so much going on the roads at the moment. Stay safe, and Slán go fóill.